I've been in the learning and development industry in many roles for about 15 years, and I've had the privilege of spending about the last three and a half years in the early careers space, supporting the kickoff of our young professionals' careers. So very glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly. How are you? I have been working in the graduate recruitment space and graduate recruitment development space now for about 15 years. So I've managed a number of programs both in the public and the private sector. And then in the last 6 months, I've sort of stepped away from that and I've started doing a little bit more, probably more on the consulting side of things, and started with Scopesuite about 3 months ago, like a subject matter expert, I suppose. So helping them out with the early careers space. So yeah, thank you.
So to get us started, I really wanted to put some context around the session today. As we all know, our industry in the early career talent space is a very special industry. It's special because we really are fortunate in how we work together. We love collaborating, we thrive on connection. We have a really safe environment where we love to share anything and everything with each other. And when Kelly, James and I got together and decided to provide this workshop, we really wanted to ensure that we continued to do that and to really provide those opportunities for the industry. So we're delighted to be able to have this time together today. And while we're really wanting to look at this session to really cover a lot about the foundational insights around graduate programs and all the aspects and components that needs to be considered around that and in your role, we also recognise that the delivery of learning and how we are attracting and recruiting the talent and our graduates has changed for 2020. Some of these changes have been imposed changes due to the environment that we're navigating at the moment with the pandemic, while other changes are now deliberate and they're giving us an opportunity to really rethink differently about what we do in our industry as our working environments change or the way we work or want to work has changed. So really, really great opportunity for us to kind of regroup and start to talk about foundationally what we think in principle around graduate programs, but then where are the opportunities starting to lie coming into 2021. So some of this information shared in this session may be new to some of you. I know there's a lot of new faces coming into this call today, so welcome. It's great to have you part of the industry. We'd love to connect with you further. And while some of you are also using this as a refresh, you've been in the industry for some time and you do want to use this generally as a reconnect and a bit of a refresh to see what everyone is doing as well and to collaborate. So whichever participant you are, welcome. And please feel free to take notes. Please feel free to share any of your own insights through the session, either through the chat function. And we look forward to get moving with that. So as we get started, 2021 still feels a little uncertain. I don't know how everyone else is feeling at the moment. We continue to navigate and recover from a disruptive year this year, and we're now looking towards the next 3 months. The next 3 months seems to be quite critical for a lot of us at the moment, particularly as we're wrapping up a lot of our recruitment, and we're now preparing for bringing graduates into our business and into their inductions. So we just want to open the conversation up. We want to make sure Kelly, James and I are going to cover some of these points through the session. But in the chat box, if you're able to, we'd like to understand what are the top 2 perceived challenges that you're worried about in the next 3 months? The next 3 months from now until the new year, what are the top 2 challenges that you're worried about with your graduates at the moment? Please pop it into chat. Please feel free to share, even if it's just a one word or a theme, if it's the components around it. Is it development? Is it bringing them together? Is it connecting the managers? What's the challenge? What's the top 2 challenges that's really causing you a little bit of stress and maybe a little bit of strain at the moment? Thanks, Kirsty. Connectedness, really important. Grace, thank you. Virtual onboarding, yeah, really, really important one there, Lillian. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm just about to forward you the email Janita sent. So she's
just going to mute. Right, connecting graduates to others and their teams in a virtual environment. Thank you, Heidi. And a new grad national induction, all virtual. Okay, fantastic. So there's definitely a lot of themes coming through around this world of virtualization that we're living in. So fantastic. Thank you. Please keep sharing this. We'll keep referring back to the chat function as we move forward. And I think that we're on point with what we can talk about. So we've got this presentation slide here. We're going to go straight into this. Thank you. A little bit about DBL. I can just get that. So for those of you who don't know Development Beyond Learning, we're an Australian, proudly Australian born and bred business. We're all about human skills and human skills development for the future workforce. We've backed that through behavioural science and really thinking about how we use behavioural science to help embed graduates into our workplace. We use that through both our first-class trainers, but also our unparalleled heritage in the early talent space. So we've been passionate in this space for 15 or so years. Since the pandemic has started for us globally, we have impacted and supported over 100,000 students, interns and graduates, virtually and digitally, doing that from a lot of locations from Europe and UK coming into Asia and Australia. And you know, really have got a good understanding of what's been happening in the Northern Hemisphere and what are those lessons learned to come into the period that we're here in Australia. And of course, we're really delighted that we've become finalists of Learning and Development Awards this year, which have been in partnership with some of our clients in Europe. So a little bit about DBL, and I shall now hand you over to Kelly, who will talk a bit about Scopesuite and then get us into the session.
Oh. James, if I just have, thank you. So Scopesuite as well started in Australia a few years ago, and it started off the back of actually apprenticeship programs and trying to build a solution to help apprentice managers coordinate their programs, particularly with the difficulties they have with dealing with RTOs and on-the-job learning and things like that. So that's sort of how it started. And it's branched out from there to really look at not only apprentices, but also now graduates and interns and different avenues like that. So it's basically software that helps you replace Excel, if we want to put it simply like that. So it helps you to automate a lot of those processes. So so we've been working with a lot of clients in Australia, but there's also a lot of clients now also in the UK and the US and Europe now as well. So moving along, James, on the next slide. Yes, so we do have four products basically that we look after at the moment. And so we've got pulse checks and feedback, we've got rotation management, we've got a learner logbook and a wellness tool as well. And then if you put those together, you get a dashboard like this that basically with your reporting and helps you to keep on top of your learners and how they're tracking and things like that. So it's I suppose in a nutshell, it's a sophisticated way of bringing it all together in one system that helps you sort of understand how people are traveling, but where are the opportunities for you to intervene as a grad program manager as well and make sure that they're keeping on track. So that's what Scopesuite is.
Great, thank you, Kelly.
Cool. So in relation to our time today, we've broken the agenda up into three main areas. So we're trying to think about it from a program manager's perspective. You've got the planning stage, the implementing stage, and the reviewing stage. So that's sort of how we've sort of structured today's session. There is time allocated at the end as well for an open forum. So if you want to ask questions either through the chat function or wait until the end when we can have an open discussion about it, that's fine as well. But I believe the first thing we're going to do is a poll to help us just sort of understand where everyone is at the moment. So, and there it is. So we're basically just trying to understand what the balance is between in-person and virtual, or if you don't know yet type thing as well. Very good. So we've got
Waiting for about 12 more, Kelly. So,
yep. So we're getting there. We've got 70% of you have finished. Pretty good, nearly 80%. So it looks like, you know, following the trend of that information there, it looks like majority of you are still looking towards having both in-person and virtual moving forward next year. But then a lot, you know, some people potentially just doing in-person and some people just doing virtual. So yeah, so it sounds like as we move through the session, we're going to be talking a bit about both, okay, which is just helpful for us to understand. Great. All right, thanks, James. All right, next slide for me, please. There's the poll. Okay, so when, in relation to planning, so when we look at this first stage of planning, what I really just wanted to highlight at this point is that it's really important, and it makes life a lot easier as you move through each of the stages as well, is that you are really clear up front about what your why is. So why do you have your program? Why do you, so it could be, for example, future leaders. That's quite a traditional approach in that people are trying to bring in young people to train them up for future leaders. It could be that you're in a particular organization that really needs some hard to find technical skills. So you have a grad program to bring those technical skills in. It could be that you're in an organization that's in an industry that's not well known. And so you're trying to attract people to your industry and develop them up. It could be from a diversity perspective. So, you know, it could be from a gender perspective, particularly, you know, like IT companies usually are trying to boost gender. It could be that you have an aging workforce and you're trying to bring some more younger talent through the organization. So there's lots of different reasons why you might have a grad program in your organization. And sometimes you even might be more than one of these things at the same time as well. So you might be trying to achieve things, or even sometimes I've even known in an organization, might have separate programs and each program has a different why, and that's fine too. But as long as you understand what it is and you're clear on what that strategy is, it's a great first place to start for sure. Next slide, please, James. So in relation to planning, and so when you've then got your why, I just wanted to call out quickly, what are some of the elements that you might need to think about a little bit more to help you in your planning or help you in your decision making around what learning to actually offer your graduates? So I'm not going to go through all of these, but hopefully you can read through them on the screen. But as an example, and particularly relevant at the moment, is geography, for example. So if your grads are all in the one city, in a state where everything is going okay, then you might be looking towards in-person learning next year, for example. If all your grads are nationally or across countries, then you might potentially be looking at only a virtual offering next year. So it just comes into play quite significantly, actually, with the geography of your graduates. The length of the disciplines is as well as another important area. So depending on whether you have highly technical graduates coming in and you need that balance between soft skills and technical skills, or you might be looking for more, there might not be any specific disciplines that you hire for because your program is more of a generalist leadership program. And so your learning offering might be slightly different for that sort of cohort. Then we talk about the length of your program. So if your program is 12 months, for example, you might need to condense that learning into that 12-month period. Whereas if it's 2 years, you might be able to spread it out a little bit more. And so then linking to that is then the timing of your learning. So within that 12 months, for example, at what point in time is that particular type of learning relevant, and when do you need to deliver it to have the best impact on your graduates? So there's all these sorts of, so that's a long list, but there's all little things within those elements that you just need to take into consideration as you're planning out your learning program for next year. And what I might just say at this point in time as well is there is there's no hard and fast rule with these things, because obviously it depends on your organization and it depends on the industry that you're in and things like that. But as a general guide, as long as you're going through these things and yep, that's meeting our needs, that's the most important thing to consider at this point in time. Thank you. And then I think I'm throwing to James now.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Kelly. So everyone, just from a bit of a macro perspective, I suppose, into planning. We're obviously in the post-COVID environment, and we know that there's a very heightened focus at the moment on the human side of work. COVID's put well-being front and center for many, many organizations at the moment, which is great to see. And we know that throughout this period, there's been a bit of a shift now towards a purpose-driven culture. For many companies, with individuals, employees, societies, and organizations trying to act together much differently. And that's led to this wonderful phrase that I like of this social enterprise, of a more human-centric rewiring of the relationship between individuals and organizations, which is really important to think about as we're moving from programs that we've had before into how we're thinking about them moving forwards. And from our own research recently of 140 companies globally into the impacts post-COVID or in and post-COVID on learning and development, we know that there is a huge majority agreeing and strongly agreeing that COVID is going to create long-term change and innovation in the way that we develop and engage with our early talent. So really, really worth us bearing that in mind before we go into the detail. And so in terms of what that means, it's the case that the human impact of COVID means that interns and grads really need different support this year. I'm sure a lot of you who've been to our sessions know that we're really big fans of self-determination theory. And self-determination theory says that as individuals, we need 3 different things in order to be our best selves. We need autonomy to feel in charge of our own direction. And at the moment, that's on the rise, whether we like it or not. We're all working remotely in dispersed environments. We need connectedness and to feel aligned between our own purposes and values and to those of the organizations, entities, clubs and societies and people we engage with. And connectedness is really down, as we all know. And finally, we need capability. We need to feel like we've got the skills and the ability to do what is required of us and to do it competently and to do it well. And if we build the right capability in our young professionals moving forward, it's the human talent right now that's really got the potential to be the star of the show, both in increasing organizational resilience, driving agility, driving competitive advantage. So this young professional talent pipeline is really more critical than ever. So what that means then is that as we move into the planning for our programs, we need to think that our programs and our program design has to support autonomy. It's already happening, but we need to guide it and enhance it. We need to enhance connectedness. A lot of people are doing a lot in this space now, but we all need to do more to give individuals access and insight to relationships, to processes and to services and to culture. And we need to build capability, particularly in things like remote working, remote collaboration, that were not part of our programs previously. Sorry, I'm just having a little slide delay here. There we go. So in terms of some practical planning, there are 5 kind of broad trends at the moment to elevate your program. Some of these won't be new to people. That's starting development early, really giving people what they need before they come into your organization. A strong prioritization of future skills that have not previously been on our radar before, like remote working, remote collaboration, remote social and emotional intelligence. We've got this external and internal blend now. We're all resource poor. Not everybody can build and maintain and curate suites of programs for specific audiences. But there's also an internal delivery component, and that doesn't mean that program managers need to be delivering anything. We still, as an external provider, deliver the large majority of content for our clients, but they bring in experts to enhance that internal delivery and to build contextualization and relevance. There's a huge move to rethinking learning platforms now, and we want our platforms to be much smarter and to be able to manage not just content curation and distribution, but to really enhance on-the-job application of skills and to also include social connectedness and social platforms as well within it. And a creative engaging of managers, particularly in terms of this internal contextualization. And now while there are many things that you can do with your program, and as Kelly said, there's no right or wrong, there's no one list of must-do things anywhere. This bit on the right here is what we would consider that if you were going to do these things, do these and do them well. And that's, so our 8 keys are to keep warm. So pre-induction, more important than ever, graduates know they are missing awareness and skills around how to build relationships, how to manage their personal brand in this environment. We need to help them with that before they come in and start engaging with people. We also want to start programs with a bang. There is a huge behavioral science concept of anchoring, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. We remember the things that are connected to a fun experience and an engaging experience, where people remember those years later. We deal with graduates and they remember the experiential components and the fun components at the start of their program. So start with some kind of bang that people will remember. A huge part here is to engage leaders. And I'm going to come onto that a little bit later in more detail in the implementation phase. But harnessing authority bias and letting graduates see that senior leaders and senior stakeholders take very seriously the application of human skills and behavioral skills for successful performance is incredible. Experiential content, as I mentioned, is really huge, whether that's at the beginning of the program all the way through. It can be fun activities, fantastic engaging experiential learning, site visits. There are lots of ways to bring practicality into your program. Transfer of learning is huge. We know that the more people engage with concepts and learning concepts and apply them in different environments, the more they assimilate them, the more they personalize them, the more they use them and remember them. So learning needs to go in between rotations, in between divisions, through programs. And importantly, we need to impress on people the fact that human skills are to be leveraged everywhere, particularly in COVID. Things like remote personal brand, remote collaboration, you can use those in networks with your friends, in social environments. There are skills that can be used everywhere. The next huge part for us is business projects. A lot of our clients run a business project towards the end of their program. Some do smaller ones throughout. It's a format that is very familiar to university students. They learn and then they demonstrate skills. It's really, really a tangible way for them to show and realize the importance of them learning along the way, because they will need to demonstrate those skills. And business projects, beyond all evaluation, provide a really powerful way to show senior leaders the growth and the potential of your graduate cohorts. We also need to consider reorientation. We know it's really difficult for people to transition into learning programs. They also have to move around in rotations, and more people are remembering now that we need to carefully reorient people off our graduate programs and into their roles. And a huge part of behavioral science comes into play there to help support them in that part. And the final is evaluation, which again, we'll talk about a little later. I think Angela will go into more detail on that, but we live and die by data and evidence and data-driven decision-making, and that needs to run right the way through your program on many levels. So I'll let us come to that shortly, but hopefully that gives you a few practical things to work with. And there we are. So in terms of how we will do this and supporting these things, there are 3 key lenses that we think, if everybody pays attention to, will help us to support autonomy and enhance connectedness and build capability. And that's keeping a really strong focus on remote working capabilities. As we mentioned earlier, not all of our teams are remote, but the reality is we are working in a broadly remote environment, in different offices, different teams, different client groups, and we need that capability. We need to really focus on belonging and fostering and driving a strong sense of belonging between between graduates and everything happening within your business. And finally, to really focus on mental well-being. We know that the more pressure and stress we're under, the harder it is to perform. And if we don't really help people to feel psychologically, emotionally, and physically safe and attached, they are going to struggle to be their best selves. So 3 really key lenses there. Very quickly, there's a lot of ways to look at a learning program. I'll let someone take some screenshots in a moment. At a high level, if you're focusing on nothing else for graduates in pre-boarding, we want to look at remote networking events and building capabilities aligned to thriving in your company and remote networking. When they come on board, we're looking for remote collaboration, getting beyond knowing each other into doing things and applying that knowledge, and skills around adaptability mindset, effective communication, remote self-management, remote personal brand. During the program, we want coaching with different stakeholders to build connectedness and things like social and emotional intelligence and taking charge of your career during change. And then on an ongoing basis, we're looking for facilitated peer coaching, different relationship expansion, and things like resilience, grit, framing, positioning, and lots of tips from previous grads about how they rolled through programs. I'll leave that one moment for anyone taking a screenshot. I'll also let you take a screenshot of this slide. You'll see a lot of similarities to how we develop managers. The needs and learning needs and support needs of managers are very similar to those of graduates, just elevated and slightly differently contextualized, but their underlying needs are very, very, very similar. And the last thing I'll touch on before heading back to Kelly is I think there's a lot of different ways to frame a journey, but I find people like a visual example. So this is a little bit of a bare bones, but a good way that we like to visualize journeys with clients. And no matter what your personal blend of virtual and face-to-face is at the moment, one way or another, programs must have a pre-induction and a keep warm. We need to prepare people. This is a very minimal amount of launching discs and virtual briefings. This is where we now recommend people build in remote teamwork and collaboration capabilities. Your induction now, whether face-to-face or virtual, really important that we bed down those skills, that we bring people in and set them up really well for the relationships they're going to build. Your main learning program needs to have a mixture of blended face-to-face learning one way or another. There needs to be just-in-time progression of capabilities as aligned to what people will need as they start to collaborate and work more. We must have action learning periods that support autonomy and on-the-job and individual progression that involves managers, manager coaching kits, and in bringing that holistic connection of graduate and manager learning together. We really recommend keeping your learning journey, preferably on behavioral skills, now to around about 12 months. Graduates have had a 3-year university program. I don't think they need a 3-year development behavioral skills program. Let's focus on getting them as much as we can in a shorter period so they can leverage those holistic skills, moving forward into business challenges and demonstration of skills, and to give them time then to think about this important transition where we might start looking at one-to-one coaching to help people applying for roles and positioning themselves correctly, and moving forward into that more higher level leadership skills as they move to transition into the business. So one way or another, if you're thinking about these categories and you're thinking about a progression and an elevation and an involvement of leaders and stakeholders and a holistic experience, you're going to be on the right track to a significantly improved and relevant model. So that's it from me from the planning phase for the moment. Kel, I'll just pass back to you for a quick look at key stakeholders.
Great. So just to wrap up that sort of planning stage, is we just wanted to also highlight the importance of stakeholders as part of this process as well. And sometimes I know particularly early in my career, I kind of tried to do it all myself and forgot that there was actually some other players in this thing. And so engaging your stakeholders as part of the planning is a really important component, and stakeholders come in all different shapes and sizes. So obviously the people who are going to lead or manage your grads in the business are a particular group of stakeholders that you really want to get on board, because if they can have some input into this, you'll find that they are much better advocates and feel a little bit more involved in what's delivered as part of the learning program as well. The graduates themselves, particularly, your past cohorts, are an excellent source of information and input into your program as well. And then any sort of also additional decision makers within your business. So anyone who maybe, well, one has to give you money, so maybe like finance, for example, or your chief people person, whatever it might be, just making sure that you're identifying who they are and getting them involved in that planning stage so that they at least are on board and can be an advocate for your program as well. And down the bottom there is just different ways that you can go about doing that as well. My personal preference was always focus groups, and obviously at the moment it would be Zoom meetings or team meetings, but actually having conversations, because that's where you'll get you know, that's that two-way communication as opposed to just them providing you with information. So that would be my preference, but there's many different ways, depending on obviously where they're located, that you can go about engaging them in that process. So we just want to, yeah, call that out for you. Right, and this was just a nice little quote that we wanted to share with you as well. So from McKinsey, so the requirement to prepare for the future of work has shifted from being a distant hypothetical to a very immediate priority. And I know Ange and James and I were talking about this the other day as well, around the future of work and just that term, the future of work. And we're just talking about, well, really every year we're talking about the future of work because there's always the future of work. So it's about not thinking it's always something way out in the future. It's actually constantly evolving, and we're always having to think about the future of work. So just a great little quote there.
Fantastic. I think this is me. Thanks, Kelly, and thanks, James. That's great. So we've covered quite a lot in the planning session, and I had a question on chat whether you can have access to the presentations of our slides. Of course, we're very happy to share as much of this intelligence for you to take away. So if you're scribbling away on your notes, fantastic, do that if that's helping you in the immediate time we're in. But of course, we'll be happy to share these slides for you to use in your own time moving forward. So really, when we're thinking about implementation, a lot of that just comes from the planning and the planning and the planning that comes out before that. And I think, once we are really identifying exactly what the purpose of our graduate programs are, what kind of stakeholder buy-in and engagement and support we're getting internally from our business to support those graduates, and then of course how we're then mapping out that experience for the graduates themselves when they come into their careers. This is really about now how we're considering the implementation and I guess the execution of those components coming through. So we do want to make this session a little bit more interactive. We want to really get a sense from people who are on this call and are comfortable to share or to share some ideas of where they are at the moment and what they're thinking. If you're comfortable to use the chat function, please do. I'm also going to invite one or two people to bring in some thoughts on this. So what are the biggest challenges that you're feeling with rolling out your program for your 2021 cohort? It might be one, it might be a handful. Maybe what is the biggest challenge that you're currently feeling at the moment in rolling out your program for 2021? Again, please feel free to put it into the chat, or I would love to ask anyone to take themselves off mute and to share their perspective. Just got to see if anyone
Angela, I'm happy to share. It's Brooke from CV. For me, the biggest challenge that I'm finding at the moment is actually not knowing when we're going to be back in the office. And then when we do go back to the office, what that looks like. So for the different groups of grads that I've got, that kind of doesn't really matter. But for other groups of grads, it really does. And it's really going to impact how I run the onboarding, how I run the programs. So that's kind of all up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Brooke. And just to give context for the rest of us, when you're thinking about your grads, are they located in different locations? Is that the main challenge? Is it the different roles that they carry? Could you give us a bit more detail around that just to help us understand?
So I have grads based all across the country, some based at our brewery locations. So for those groups, that they will go to their location. That's fine. The breweries are okay. But for the groups that are based in our main head office, we're really unsure as to what the new working environment's going to be like. And we've just gone through an integration this year. We've been told we're merging offices. There's not enough space for everyone to be in the office every day. So that's really going to impact support for the program. So if some of the grads do need to work from home more than they've ever done in the past, how do we provide that? Some of the comments you mentioned before, connectedness, the sense of belonging, the networking, all of those things that they can do face to face. How do we enable all of that to still continue to happen when maybe they're working part-time virtually, part-time in the office? So at the moment I'm preparing hopefully for, you know, a face-to-face induction, but further on from that, we kind of need to be really agile in being able to come up with ways to support them if the work environment's changing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely appreciate that perspective. Thank you for sharing, Brooke. That's great context. And I think definitely a common challenge that's coming through globally. And you know, I think the advantage to some degree that we have in the Australian market is that we're not just exploring this environment for the first time. We're now 7 months into it, 8 months into it. There's still a level of uncertainty, but maybe there's a little bit more comfortability on how we're thinking about the options of going to virtual. Maybe we're looking at way different. We've got the systems already set up to allow us to do that, as opposed to what we were finding with our colleagues based on the Northern Hemisphere. They were literally having to pivot and react with a 3-week notice period while onboarding graduates, because it was that fast moving of the timing of when global pandemic hit to when they were all shifting to working from home. But absolutely a really big challenge and a big issue coming into next year's program. And what some of you might also be interested to hear about is that we've come out of graduate onboarding and the induction period for our Asia-based clients in the industry and our European-based clients, and they've come out with some really fantastic results from that. What we're actually seeing is that when graduates are coming into the marketplace or coming into their first role, they still carry that same behavior and that same feeling they would if they were coming into your office for the first week. They don't have, you know, virtual fatigue yet. They haven't been in front of their computer too much. You know, this is the first time that they're engaging with a company in their careers. So that behavior still sits there with the graduates, which is fantastic for us. And now it's just thinking about how we want to execute and deliver that in a virtual way or a face-to-face mode, definitely depending on what the environment is. Thanks, Brooke. Anyone else got anything else they'd like to share on challenges? Please unmute yourself.
I might go if that's okay, if no one else wants to talk.
Yes, fantastic. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So hi, my name's Danny. I'm from Unity Water. We're based in Queensland. So I guess we're quite fortunate in that Queensland has coped quite well during COVID, but actually what's happened out from the outs by going through it is that for us, we've actually gone remote working and we probably won't transition back. For a company of about 700 people and probably more than 50% will remain remote. It's just kind of worked out that way. So for me, the biggest challenge at the moment is that our graduate program runs that they are mentored and taught by their direct leaders in the daily BAU and so on and so forth. And what I guess I'm struggling with is how do I ensure that I'm supporting my leaders in teaching these entry pathway people on a virtual kind of basis. Like for them, they don't have that kind of in-office experience anymore. They're going to go straight to like maybe 1 week of induction and then back out to the virtual world. How do we ensure that the leaders know how to manage that from a learning and development kind of side of life? Because I think we've definitely equipped and taught the leaders on how to manage their peers and team members who have, you know, worked in the offices for many, many years, but these are students who have not had that experience, won't get that experience. And how do I ensure that the leaders are equipped on how to manage that from a learning and teaching point of view?
I'm happy to jump in there quickly. Danny, that's a fantastic question. And I'm actually going to pause it. We're about to move on in just a moment to a short section on manager engagement. From DBL's perspective in the implementation part, engaging managers is huge. It's probably one of the biggest contributing factors to success or otherwise. So hopefully that section will answer a lot of your questions. And I'm also very happy to have a follow-up chat as well. So I'll just pause it for that section. Brilliant.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, Danny, for the question. Great one. Heidi, did I see you wave your hand? Was I correct? Love to hear from you as the final contribution before we move on. Thank you.
Sure, yes, I was waving, but I hadn't unmuted, so I'll try that again. So I'm from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and we, very similar to the other speakers, we've got graduates across Australia, and also a bit of that mix of some can be in the office, some can't, and that is one challenge. But just personally speaking, I'm finding it really hard not having the face-to-face. As somebody that is quite loving the face-to-face elements in previous years, having that direct contact with all of them at several face-to-face workshops over the year is a void that I'm curious as to how I will fill. This year we've done a few more regular virtual sort of ask me anything type sessions, which has been good, but for myself I'm finding it a challenge to get to know the grads and have that relationship that you just comes from face to face. And definitely the graduates as well this year have felt that challenge of just not it being harder to network. And also sometimes we have people that have difficulty have conversations in a face-to-face environment anyway, so it's a little bit trickier to get people engaged with, yes, with having conversations and really thinking about how that person might be feeling in that new environment. As the previous speaker was saying, being new to an office environment or a virtual office environment is one of the biggest challenges for the grads. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. That's a great perspective to come out with. And I think you've also touched a little bit on a point that I think we also should make sure we pause and recognize. You know, it's not just how we're needing to support our graduates and even our managers to be able to support the graduates for us, but it's also how we're supporting ourselves at the moment. It's been a really, really hectic year for all of us as industry leaders, managing grad programs, looking after graduates and you know, really being that support system for them. And I think, you know, there's definitely something to be said that, you know, even for us, we need to pause and figure out how we support each other as well, where I'm hoping more of these connections that we're doing right now are really important, because we can have moments where we have bad days. You know, I was talking to a really good industry colleague who's based out in Asia, works for a large global company, and she said, look, I just had a day, Ange, where I just didn't have enough in my tank and I couldn't do that coaching session for the graduate. And I had to be really honest to the grad and say, hey, look, I'm not going to get the best version of me today because this is how I'm feeling. Can we reschedule? And just allowing to have that vulnerability and for us to be able to share that, you know, there's moments where we're also struggling, can be really powerful and can turn out to be quite powerful, and to get that reverse interaction happening from those graduates as well. But I do think you're touching on another really good point, is that connectiveness piece and how we're thinking about different ways to connect. So I'd love, if anyone's got ideas, please put it in the chat function. If you've actually thought about this yourself, or you've tested out some thoughts, anything that might help Heidi to consider, please drop it into chat. I'm sure she, as well as others, would love to hear that. So with that, and conscious of time, thank you for your contributions. We've got another question to ask. So James, if you can please go on to the next one. We'd like to understand, while there's challenges, what are the opportunities or perhaps new ideas that you're looking to implement in 2021? So this might be whether you've come into the business and you've now taken over the graduate program, you've reviewed what has been the grad program, and now you're coming in to take it on and look at it. Maybe you've been looking after the grad program, and now this year has created an opportunity for you to rethink something and how you're managing that, or supporting a delivery of something of that nature. What's an opportunity that you may have identified that you would love to share with everybody, no matter how big or small that is? Again, on the chat, or if you're happy to speak, please unmute yourself. I'm keeping a lookout for any people unmuting themselves.
Hi, Angela. I would love to step in. Hello, I am Grace Freckleton, and I'm from Langer Rock. So we're in engineering and construction. And I've recently stepped into the role of looking after all of our entry-level talent programs. And I'm definitely going through our program as we have been running it for many years, and looking at ways to improve it. Previously, we have brought everyone together to New South Wales, which has definitely limited the amount of speakers within the business we can bring in, because we mainly focus on those based in Sydney. So the opportunity that I'm really looking forward to in 2021 is having that balance of face-to-face and virtual, and being able to bring a lot of our leaders and construction managers from across the country to present and speak to our graduates, our interns and our undergraduates, rather than it just being contained to people within one state.
Great, fantastic. That's a great idea. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Grace. Any other ideas, opportunities that anyone's exploring or looking to implement? Brooke, I think you were putting delivery of the training for the balancing of face-to-face and virtual as an opportunity.
Yeah, so really, similar to what, yeah, similar to what Grace is saying there, you know, utilising the virtual opportunity more as well, and looking at then when is the timing of the training, because we, again, like we also fly people in, so we try and sometimes we kind of put it all up front, but you know, what's more valuable to be done up front, and then what can we drip feed and continue to connect the grads, you know, weeks and months down the track in a virtual capacity.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Brooke. I definitely think that balance between virtual and face-to-face across multiple stakeholders, whether it's just the graduates, whether, you know, James will be diving a bit more into the manager engagement piece. There's opportunity a lot in how we deliver that and the mode we use and how we think about the experience of the graduates and then what they can get from that. So there's a lot to discuss there and unpack, which I think is a great segue, Brooke, thank you, to move on to the remaining of the implementation session. So Kelly, I'll hand that over to you. I know you're covering a bit more in here before James wraps it up.
Right, so on the job, so we just wanted to talk about, particularly as part of the implementation stage, is, so it's not just actually about the learning program, but it's also providing opportunities for them to put that learning into practice. So so that can be through many different ways. It's not just about rotations, because I do also understand that not every program or every organisation does rotations. It can be also through projects, and whether that's a project in relation to the team they're in at that time, or it's a project that you give across a group of grads together, you know, from different disciplines. So you get to do a bit of a multidiscipline project. I've certainly worked on programs in the past where the project was actually a viable product that the company would actually invest in later on down the track. So there's different ways that you can sort of give them projects to do. There's also the opportunity for job shadowing, or even also volunteering, because volunteering often gives them an opportunity to practice different skills that they might not necessarily get exposure to in the business regularly yet. So volunteering is also a really great option for them as well. Obviously mindful that, you know, it depends on what we can do and how we can get about next year, but just to call out and just to think about, it's not just about the workshops and the virtual catch-ups and things like that. There's actually, you know, there's got to be opportunities for them within their roles to actually put some of that learning into practice as well. And also thinking about getting them to also do some self-reflection around putting that learning into practice as well, and getting them to think about, you know, I did this workshop, how have I now actually implemented that learning? So so think about that. Next slide, James. And then we've talked about, and I know Danny, you sort of talked about leaders as well. So the other element on the job obviously is their direct leader, and who they have a relationship with on the job. So it is also about setting up your leaders for success as well. And I know James is going to go into a little bit more detail about this from a learning perspective, but from an operational perspective, we really want to make sure that their leaders are setting tasks and that the grads are productive and have work to do, that the leaders are setting what their expectations are on that work, that the leaders are introducing them to people in the business that they need to be connected to, that the leaders are observing the work that they're doing and giving them feedback on that work. And whether it's at the end of a rotation or end of a period of time, that they're sitting down and actually having a performance conversation with those grads, just to sort of give us a summary or a wrap up of how they've been performing. So that's we just wanted to include that sort of information as part of this webinar today as well, from a practical perspective.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Great little segue there again, which takes us really into this manager engagement. Now, there are many things we could talk about from all of our perspectives around implementation, but really at the moment we are feeling that the engagement of managers is one of the huge big ticket items on the table here. And it's been shown over the years in many ways and surveys that it's the interaction, despite what else we do in our programs and our content and our support, in many cases, it's the interaction with and the support of people's managers that makes the difference between a really great, an okay and a not so great experience. And we know that based on that, graduates will find it easier or more difficult to perform. And there's a reality from a cultural perspective that it's very hard to care about something more than your manager does. Your manager sets the tone about the priorities and what should be focused on and why. And if your managers do or don't care about the importance of behavioral skills, the importance of social and corporate social interaction, and all of the things that go with it, after a short amount of time, your graduates are going to find it very hard to care too. So this is huge. So what is manager engagement? So for us, manager engagement is the normal degree of discretionary time and effort that managers invest in the development of their early career talent. Now, importantly here is a few things. So firstly, normal. We're not talking about high performers. Normal means the average. So what does the average baseline of manager engagement look like? There will always be highs and lows, but we're looking for the norm, and we want to affect that norm. The next bit is this discretionary time and effort. We're not talking, for an engaged manager, this goes way beyond the idea of simple fortnightly one-to-ones or formalized performance management and performance engagement. This is about managers going out of their way to take interest in the projects people are working on, the success factors, helping them grease wheels, pointing them in the direction of the right people, and showing a genuine interest in their graduates being really successful rather than just doing their job. So that's key. And the last bit here is invest. Again, it is an investment. This is about a want to do, not a have to do. It needs to be about seeing that there is a return from this, a return A for the individual, the graduate, and B for the manager. So really importantly, I'd just like to look at why manager engagement matters, because like anything, our managers are busy, they're time poor, and we can't keep going around asking and demanding things of people without it being a two-way street and a give and take and a give back. We need to create a what's in it for me for the managers. It's really powerful as well. So in terms of why it matters for the manager. All of our managers, particularly graduate managers, are often mid-level managers to a degree. And they're on their own career progression, and they need to learn and develop and grow themselves, and they want to. And we know that when manager-graduate relationships are really strong, the best early talent follow managers through their career. They may not work in their teams forever, but they will be connected to them socially on LinkedIn, via projects. They will support, they may come back to work for them later. And you want your managers to see having graduates as the opportunity to build an army of raving fans who remember them as being the most influential impact on the start of their career. More than any other manager you will have, you will remember how the first managers drove you to success and growth or made life really difficult. And it will be anchored in your memory. So there's a huge what's in it for me. And it's a very smart strategic career move for managers. Early career talent demographics are changing very rapidly. The needs and learning needs of early career talent mirror everybody else's. So the more your managers get down pat with really effectively engaging and developing graduates, the better their managers they'll become anyway. It also matters for the early career talent. We know transition into grad programs is difficult. We know that managers have got the most direct impact over how that transition unfolds and how they start to have impact. And whether you do or don't like the 70-20-10 model, I've got mixed feelings about it. But one way or another, managers, if not control, massively heavily influence around 90% of that model in terms of directing the social and the informal activities, and then really laying out that 20% of semi-formal interactions and engagements. So that's a huge impact that managers can have one way or another on development for early career talent. And finally, it matters for the business. A fast ROI, a quick speed to value for early career talent is enormous given what we invest collectively in wages, in programs, in structures. We know early career talent talk to each other all the time. There is a huge impact on the reputation of your brand among early career talent peers when people have a really successful relationship and mentoring relationship with their manager. And ultimately, it's retention. We know that the best way to retain people and engage them is to let them have an impact, let them see that they're making a difference and that they're contributing. So the more that is supported, the more people engage with meaningful projects, deliver and are recognized, the less they're going to look to skip program and the longer they will stay with you and grow with you. So there's a huge multiple layers of reasons here as to why this is really important. So what's the objective? Plain and simple, the objective is to leverage behavioral science. If you want someone to do something, make it easy. So we want to make giving discretionary time and effort more normal and more easy. And to briefly come back to your question, Danny, in terms of how you do that, and I'm happy to elaborate later. For our impact, there are 3 layers of management development. The bottom layer is informing, the second is educating, and the top is empowering. Most companies do informing. Informing is a short information session for your managers. Here's what things will look like. Here's a program guide and maybe a couple of tips. Everybody does that. It's great, but it's the bare minimum. The next layer is educating, which most don't do, which is helping to develop the skills and capability of managers to better understand early career talent trends, development needs, people development needs, and to help them build the skills to have an impact. We know that is a huge, huge effector. And the final is empowerment, which starts to get a bit more complicated and a bit more cultural around how you then give managers autonomy to start driving those relationships. And there are some simple practical ways. What we do with a lot of clients is provide coaching guides and mentoring guides after workshops to let managers know what was covered, what the main points are, any key models, and give them a range of cool coaching questions so that managers can start to follow up consistently with graduates, have meaningful interaction, and do it easily. Just walk into that meeting, look at the guide on the way in. They're experienced managers, they know the business. You give them a few pointers after informing and after educating so they can go in and manage those conversations effectively, and they will start leaning on you a lot more and leaning in a lot more, and they will want to give more discretionary time and effort because they're seeing it have an impact. So that's probably enough. We've got a whole masterclass session on manager engagement. I'd love to go into it in more detail. Please feel free to let me know. It's something I'm quite passionate about. So I hope that's just a nice little snapshot for now, and that's going to add some value. Thank you. Angela, I believe we're back to you for review phase, I think.
Yes, for sure. And thank you, James and Kelly, for your inputs in that implementation phase. I think they're all really valuable points. And I just wanted to wrap up something around the manager engagement piece. I think, for the history of graduate programs that's ever existed, we've always recognized the importance of engaging managers, so that has not changed. I think there's an opportunity that we're now stepping into coming out of 2020 is that managers are now asking for more support to help them navigate in this current working environment. So what we're starting to see is actually managers putting up their hands and going, hey, just like the grads navigating a remote working environment, so am I. Can you help me understand how I can kind of continue to keep my teams engaged, how I can build collaboration, how I can make sure I'm remaining inclusive with my team members. So there actually is a really beautiful opportunity coming out of this situation that we're navigating, where managers are actually also really responding and recognizing the need for their own self-development. So that might be something for you to think about and take away and perhaps further that conversation with internal stakeholders who might be looking at manager-specific training and how that might then support and lean very nicely into supporting your graduates. But definitely that increase, that swing of manager development has happened quite dramatically for us with our clients and the support that they need. So just wanted to wrap that up. Thank you, James. So very mindful of our time. There's so much to cover and always little time, but we're really hoping that you're enjoying the information so far. We wanted to spend a few minutes just covering a bit on the review. The review piece is probably the most critical portion of a development program, but I would also say it's probably the most challenging piece as well for companies to really understand, well, how do we review this? And what does success look like for us? You know, does that connect to the purpose of why we're investing in graduates into our business and into our workplace? And there is no, one recipe for this. There is various ways that companies think about it. So I'd love to invite Kelly to share perspectives on different ways that you can think about that and review. And then I'm going to come in with an idea around using a measurement tool that might help your supporting and doing that as well. Kelly.
Thank you. All right, so I just wanted to really quickly, so in relation to measuring, link back to the first slide I talked about, which was your why. So going back to your why and understanding why you have your program and what you're delivering as part of your program will help you then also to identify what are the measures of success. How do we actually know that is successful? So I just given you an example of a scorecard, and this is, these are just ideas. You might have some more, and if you do, would love you to put them into the chat function. But this is an example of one that I used in a previous program of mine, and sometimes also your measures of success will also be driven by what your organization expectations are of success as well. So you might need to include some of those as well. But satisfaction ratings was a helpful one, just to understand, are they actually enjoying the experience, and also are leaders actually enjoying the experience as well. Performance ratings was an important thing for that particular organization I was in at that time. So we would actually monitor the performance ratings of our grads and actually keep reporting on that, just to understand where they were at. Engagement score. So we used to do a whole of organization engagement survey, but we used to be able to pull out the grad results specifically and then compare the grads results to the whole of organization results to see how they were tracking. We would also track promotions. So to in what speed or in what rate were grads then progressing post the grad program. Tenure, obviously, retention is usually a pretty standard one. I must say on the retention front, I think expectations have changed a little bit over the years. I know when I first started 15 years ago, you'd probably have a measure of at least 5 or more than 5 years of a grad, whereas I think these days it's more like 3 years. I'm just going to go in the middle ground there. I'd say you'd be pretty happy if most of your grads are still around at the 3-year mark. So, and then we used to also look at some sort of industry benchmarking as well. So at that time, it was the AAGE data. And then we also sort of kept track of diversity targets that we were striving towards as well. So that's just an example, whether you find that useful or not. But yeah, it's just, it's really good on a, probably depends on the size of your program as well, but I would have thought every 6 months would be the minimum that you would at least be doing a check of these things to make sure that you're going okay. Next slide, James. And the other thing I just want to mention, and I think it might also touch a little bit on Lou's comments in the chat as well around that sort of individualized approach as well. So I just wanted an opportunity to raise this because I think when I talk to a lot of people new in the industry, this is usually one of the areas that they haven't considered, because sometimes even with programs, you've got someone who just looks after recruitment and someone who just looks after learning, and often the two aren't talking together. Whereas I think that those of us who have always done both, we have the benefit of knowing how one links into the other. But I just wanted to really highlight that you know, if you can buddy up with your recruitment person and get the data from the recruitment process that those grads have gone through, and get a good sense of how have those successful candidates performed against the capabilities or the, you know, competencies that you've selected them against. Use that information to actually help inform your learning program. And while it's probably not going to the level of individual grads, it is really important though to treat every cohort separately. So even though you've done a learning program this year for this particular cohort, you really need to look at your next year's cohort, you know, over again, and make sure, all right, for this next cohort coming through, is what we did last year going to work, or do we need to refine it and change it because they've got a different set of capabilities that we've been able to recruit for? So, because similar to while we continuously improve learning, we continuously improve recruitment. And so that's why there's got to be this sort of like yearly having, you know, looking at how we do things on a yearly basis, and not just continuing to repeat the same program year on year. That was, I think it's back to you.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, that's such a valuable point. And I think, you know, a lot of the times when we have this conversation with potential clients or our current clients, you know, there isn't always a lot of clarity from the business about what success looks like. So the onus is driven from the person who's responsible for the graduates, which can be a bit daunting sometimes. So one of the first things we do say, which is a beautiful connection, Kelly, is, well, what are you recruiting for? Like, tell us exactly what are the skills you're assessing, and then how can we help you really elevate those skills when that person comes into your business? And then how can we demonstrate that uplift from when you've assessed them at the assessment centre, and then when they're onboarding and coming into their first 6 months, 12 months of their working environment in the business. And even something like that, and showing that uplift of measure, is a great return of investment to your key stakeholders who are doing that. So that's a really great way to start to think about that. And so really what I wanted to do was just to really wrap up what Kelly has presented in, I'm hoping, a lovely red bow. And that's by really using a method or a tool that you can really start to apply, how you then want to measure return of investment and how you start to communicate that back to the business. So for those of you who are familiar, there's reference to a method or a tool called the Kirkpatrick model. It's a very well-known tool, particularly utilised in the education, learning and development, transfer of skills space coming through. And it really talks about the levels that we're coming in and how we're really trying to gauge at each level what data points we can bring into that. So you could literally take Kelly's slide that she talked about the different components, and you could literally slot this into each level and then identify where you might have opportunities to strengthen up those levels, or where you might need to back off on that. So the data is really valuable here. This is where we really come into it. So the whole idea of this model is that we want to start to see behavioural change. This is like, how do we see and identify what graduates are doing? So from looking at your reactions to learning, you know, there's a lot of I guess mixed views on happy sheets and the usability of happy sheets. The fundamental principle of that is happy sheets are great for us to identify if graduates are feeling better after going through a development program or development journey. Like, how do they feel from when they stepped into that development learning intervention to when they've walked out, and how they feel about applying it. So it is quite critical to think about how that plays into it. And then of course you can start to look at the acquisition of learning. So looking at those baseline levels, either using recruitment data, and then looking at, as a baseline, how do we then help them to support applying those skills back into the business, and the acquisition and the application of those learnings. When you look at things like level 2, you can incorporate maybe participant self-reporting. This is quite a great way, kind of really helping the individual themselves to start to own their graduate journey as well, and just not have that all on your plate. Like, what are they trying to achieve in their graduate journey from when they start, and how are they self-evaluating? And did they learn something coming out of that? How are they feeling, and how are they feeling in control of it? And then of course your level 3 kind of brings more application of learning. You can bring that into your manager, you know, manager information, pulse check surveys that are coming through, great examples of where that level 3 can start to really support that. And then, of course, when you're looking at your level 4, you want to look at what degree that learning has really come and helped from a company-wide perspective. And so that's where I would say things like performance ratings that Kelly was talking about, kind of some of your HR performance processes that you have, you want to start linking that into it. You want to make this as salient as possible so that if a manager is involved or a key stakeholder is involved in this graduate program, they can connect very easily to how the measure of success is looking for graduates, because they understand the process that's happening in the business as well. So just a tool there, really briefly talks through it. It's a great way to start to kind of map out and think about it. As the levels change, so does the depth of data and information, and if collectively, if you can bring it all in together, then you can really have a fantastic data snapshot dashboard to come back to your key stakeholders to really then help you move forward and what your next vision is for the program or what your next opportunities might be in identifying that as well. So just wanted to share that tool, and I hope that was a little bit more insight to understand how to utilize that. James, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Angela, and thanks, Kelly. And thanks everybody for your attention, patience, presence, and engaging. We've got around about 13 minutes left in the session for a little bit of a chat and a Q&A. So what I'd love to do now is just invite everybody to have a think about whether you have any questions. If you'd like to put them in the chat box, we'll look at those in a moment. If you'd like to pop your hand up to jump online and ask a question, that'd be great. And while I'm giving you a minute with that, I'd actually just like to share one of my thoughts as a little bit of a kickoff to the Q&A. Particularly related to the virtual onboarding. There was a few people that mentioned virtual onboarding during the session. And one of the trends that I wanted to share that I'm seeing that I think is really critical right now, particularly as it's just around the corner, is that while what Angela was talking about earlier about our graduates not coming into organizations with Zoom fatigue, you know, and a lot of that tiredness that some of our other teams might be experiencing. So that's 100% true. However, also there is a limit to what you can do with Zoom. So previously, most face-to-face inductions have centered around, you know, a 3-day or induction week. And we try to get as much as we can out of the value of paying to bring people together in a face-to-face environment, because you're investing in that. So you need to get the most out of it. Most clients are now realizing that you can't do an induction week virtually. Even regardless of Zoom fatigue, it's cognitive overload. There's not enough to connect learning to. There's not enough tangibility. And you just confuse people by putting too much on Zoom and too much development all together in a week. So the big move, if you are going to be inducting virtually, is to move to more of a virtual induction month and to spread that stuff out, right, in alignment with other interactions with teams and with business functions, so that as the awareness and the tangibility builds, so you are dropping in a reasonably spaced amount of learning, development, and cohesion. And if you are doing that, more than ever, it becomes important to do pre-boarding and pre-boarding activities. People still need to feel job ready as quickly as possible before they engage with too many stakeholders. So if you're going to spread your induction virtually over a month, make sure you take every opportunity possible to pick the core skills that you want people to use in their first interactions and cover them in advance of people coming into that induction month, so you've got a better spread of time. That's just a key trend that I'm seeing with a lot of clients. Thought I'd share it, might answer a few questions. And from there, Ange, could you maybe, I can't see the chat box for the minute. In fact, I might come off screen share and let's just go to open Zoom chat so we can see everybody. There we are. Ange, anything going on in the chat box that you noticed that we should look to?
Yeah, there's some great chats happening in, comments happening in the chat. Thank you very much. There were definitely some questions coming around individualizing grad programs and how to start to think about that and to consider that, which was really interesting. I know there's some comments coming in on that. So I wonder if there might be any perspectives from anyone on the floor who are in the session. Is anyone who's in the session at the moment, have you or are you planning to still individualize your graduate programs, your graduates in your cohort? And if you are you happy to share a bit more insights about how you're doing that? Kelly, did you have any, I think you shared a perspective on that. Are you able to share what your perspective was?
In relation to measuring success?
To individualizing grad programs, or like making an individualized grad journey, and if you've had any experience with that, or you've heard from other companies at all.
Yeah, so one of my, I mean, and this is from years ago, but one, and I do preempt it, it was a small program, so I had capacity to do this, but so that's something else you need to just keep in mind as well, is I would actually get the grads as part of early on, is actually get them to do, like, take the recruitment information, but then also get them to do a self-assessment against the capabilities. And so there would be a way that we did that self-assessment process. We'd actually did it in a workshop all together. And then that would identify the core learning that as a group was all beneficial, but then they would then be booked into learning that was relevant to them in relation to their learning needs. So I have done that before, but like I said, the challenges that come with that is when you've got large scale programs, it does become trickier. But having said that, I think there's so many more learning resources out there now, and different ways of looking at learning now, that you could incorporate a lot of those sorts of things into it. But it was, I mean, skipping ahead, it was going to be one of my pieces of advice, so I'll have to come up with something different now. But one of my pieces of advice was actually going to be that, like, grad programs are cohorts, right, usually, and often as program managers we look at them as cohorts, and we forget about the fact sometimes that they are individuals, and they do come with different backgrounds, they do come with different learning journeys already, they come with different experiences, and not to mention different learning preferences and all of those sorts of things. And so sometimes we lose sight of the fact that they are individuals, and sometimes within our programs we do need to create the ability for them to be individuals as well. So
yeah, thanks, Kelly. And I also think, you know, that usability of one-on-one coaching, this is where that comes into play in a really powerful way, because it's around making sure, you know, we've got graduates moving through a journey cohesively, that we're really putting the expectations up front, that's connecting to those core values and skills and behaviors that we want to see, and then allowing those individuals to then be able to go have a coaching conversation, or a team coaching session, or a mentoring session, whatever that structure might be, to really allow them to pinpoint how they're feeling in some of those areas, if there's areas to develop on, or maybe there's another area that's spinning off that might be, you know, challenging them in their role or their rotation that they're in. So that's also a very common way of how that's been covered and supported. Lou, did you have some perspective?
Yeah, I was talking about the question originally. So my name's Lou Zoanetti. I run an early careers consulting practice. So I actually work with clients who want to start early careers programs or have something that needs to be revamped or re-looked at. One of the things I'm interested in is around these individualized learning journeys. And maybe one an additional thing to think about is, so you've got your cohort where standard practice is that everyone would go through the same learning and development journey. You would identify the key competencies that you want that group to acquire, and they'd go through that journey. And then to Kelly's point, you would use that recruitment data if you were doing something a little bit more individualized. And I love the coaching session that was at AAGE this year around talking about the role of individualized coaching at the start of a grad program, and then letting them go off and do their thing. The third option is really, and this could be used for bigger companies, is to split your grad cohort into maybe 3 or 4 streams, so learning and development streams. So when you've got a big program, you know, I appreciate it's quite hard to make it individualized, but what you might do is using the recruitment data and a self-assessment tool, as Kelly said, to really identify, okay, well, these groups of graduates, you know, these 20 graduates, they really need to develop their presentation skills and their communication skills and their networking skills, whatever, right? However, these grads here, they've acquired those. They've got really good communication skills, and they've kind of know what they're doing in that space, but they need to improve their critical thinking skills and their data and, or, you know, business acumen or whatever it might be. And so then you have these like pathways. This is what we were looking to do when I managed the NAB graduate program, was really have a pathway that's like the whole grad cohort goes through here, and this is the competencies we want them to acquire, and here are some individualized things as well. And it just comes down to having the support to do that within your organization. So that's just a third kind of option to consider.
Yep. Great, fantastic. Thanks, Lou. That's a great perspective. James.
Yeah. And I'd only add to that as well, even in some cases prior to formalized learning in newer self-directed areas, one of the key things for graduates now is experiences. So a challenge with self-paced learning is before you can effectively use self-paced learning, you need to decide out of all of the things available what it is you're going to do some learning in. And if you're just coming into a corporate career and all you know is one linear perspective that you've had for a while, that you want to be an accountant and all things accounting or whatever, it's very hard to actually visualize what self-paced learning would even include. So our own founder, Josh McKenzie, on one of our recent masterclasses was talking about the idea that right now, in terms of increasing agility and diversity and future-proofing yourself, it's not about trying to find one or two extra things that you might show some interest in, but 12. You know, we don't know what the certainty of the future is going to be. We don't know which divisions and functions are going to condense or expand or automate or not yet. We've got ideas, but that's it. So if people want to future-proof themselves, they need to get outside of their comfort zone, outside of their current linear thinking, and they need to experience different functions, different divisions, and beyond structured rotations now, even if it's smaller tastes, to find out where their skills might transfer to and where their interests might transfer to. And I'd suggest that in that first 6 to 9 month period, the best thing you can do is actually to help them gain experiences and gain knowledge so that as they move further through the graduate program, and once they've learned how to self-learn a little better, then they're going to be really well prepared to start to think about which of those experiences should start to drop into more learning. So I think there's a balance there of when we choose to push people down that now go and expand more, so that we still get that consistent foundation and bedrock in place for everybody as a unified cohort before they kind of drift a little bit further. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
But I was just going to add, I mean, it also, you know, there are also programs that have a very strong technical focus as well. And so that learning journey is probably a lot more defined as well. So, so I think it comes back to that why, like, why does your program exist? And that sort of helps you guide you as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Now, I know that we all probably would love to sit and do the Q&A for a while. I think we all really enjoy just having a chat and breaking things down and sharing ideas. That's definitely a key part of the sessions that we try to run, so that it's not just us talking, and we encourage some engagement. So pretty much on time. We're about to flick over the time, and we would love to finish on time. So I'd really just like to thank everybody for the moment. Thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your valuable time to come and talk with us. Thank you, Ange and Kelly, so much for all of your work. And I hope everyone has a great week. Please feel free to get in touch. As we said, these are information sharing exercises. Ange, Kelly, myself are available. You can find our contact details on the website. Please drop us a line. We're always happy to talk further. Kelly, Ange, any final comments from you at all?
Final comment is, and I don't think we've talked about it yet, is just also please don't be afraid to get your grads involved in the design as well, right? So don't feel like it's you having to deliver everything. Get them on board and get them involved, because you'll be surprised at how many ideas and how much input they have as well. So
thanks, Kelly. I think my biggest tip, thank you all for joining us, but I think, you know, also look out for yourself, and my biggest piece of advice is make sure you've got your champions internally as well, not just your manager, but find other people in the business leaders who can act as your champion and see your vision and help you navigate what you're trying to do in the business. Really, really powerful. And if that's anything, one thing you can do ready for 2021, then I would highly recommend you do that. But thank you all. It's been a brilliant session and really appreciate the collaboration.
Lovely. Thanks both. And I suppose if I had a final tip, my tip for everybody would be to take a very, very commercial approach to the business case for your program and for development of talent. These are commercial programs. We invest money in them for a return. And I speak to too many clients who might spend anywhere from $3, $4, $5 million on wages and programs, and they struggle to get 50, 100, 150 grand into the development budget, which is crazy if you want a return on that $3, $4, $5 million fast and effective and over the long term. So please use your commercial brains when putting feasibility cases together for budget, because we will get it. We just need to make sure we position it correctly as the difference between okay and amazing. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at future sessions. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.